Bonjour, je m'appelle Antony Ernst, je suis le directeur exécutif de l'Orchestre de chambre de Lausanne et je suis honoré et ravi d'accueillir aujourd'hui Sir András Schiff, qui vient diriger et être soliste avec l'orchestre. Sir András, your memoir was entitled Music Comes Out of Silence. This is music that is very much coming out of silence because we're in a situation at the moment where many orchestras are not able to play. Does it feel special somehow to be able to make music in a situation like this?
Yes, obviously. Any form of communication is welcome, and it's a gift and a joy. Yeah, of course, we miss the audience very much. Live music is essential, as wonderful as recordings are, but to be in an auditorium and share it with people, something else. However, when we are together on stage, we feel the imaginary presence of an audience. So you close your eyes and they are there.
There will be people listening, they just won't be with us in the hall, which is
exactly
unusual. Yeah. The program that you're doing with us is one of the Bach concertos and the Schumann concerto with BARTÓK in between. Mm-hmm. You've done a lot of the Bach concertos on a modern piano as well as a forte piano. How do you find it changes when you play Bach on a modern piano and with a modern orchestra? How does that affect your approach?
This is a very old argument. Luckily, the situation is much better today. Many decades ago, when I started to play Bach on the modern piano, there was a lot of resistance from the critics and from the, let's say, the purists who say that it's a mortal sin to play Bach on the modern piano. It should be played on the harpsichord. And well, first of all, Bach very seldom specifies the harpsichord. When he says keyboard, it's a general word for keyboard instruments of the time. So it can be harpsichord or clavichord or organ or whatever, pedal piano, and even Bach knew the early forte pianos of Silbermann. However, I and many people, we have learned a lot from the historical movement of music making, and in my opinion, Bach is such a great composer. He is the greatest, and his music is universal and transcends instruments. But we performers, we have to be historically aware about style, about traditions, about improvisation, about ornamentation, and all those elements. And so what I call historically informed music making on modern instruments.
Because I find it fascinating, especially connected to the Schumann, because Schumann also comes out of the same North German tradition in a way, and you can hear, when it's the same instrument, you can hear a kind of continuity between them.
Yes, Bach is the father figure of Western classical music, and all the great composers who came after him, they share the common root. With Bach and polyphony and counterpoint, and Schumann writes in one of his books, diese musikalische Haushaltsbücher, yeah, that Bach and the well-tempered clavier should be your daily bread. Yes. That's his advice to young musicians.
And then we have Bartók, of course, who is your compatriot, who also had a complicated relationship with his homeland, as you do. Do you feel, well, what is your relationship to Bartók's music, I suppose, is what I'd like to ask.
Look, Bartók is my very favorite composer of the 20th century, certainly. Not just because of our common language, but that it plays an important role. I grew up with his music from the very first piano lessons we were given, the children pieces and the microcosmos, and so I know the language as a mother tongue. The Divertimento is one of the three works that he wrote for Paul Zacher and the Basel Chamber Orchestra, so it has very much a Swiss connection. I know very well the place in Saanen, next to Gstaad, in Berner Oberland, where he had a chalet of Paul Zacher, and he composed this, and it's a wonderful chamber music piece. Divertimento is misleading because it's not just a divertissement.
Yeah.
It's a very deep work. The slow movement is one of those night pieces, night music, which with the predictions of just before the Second World War. So he felt he was such a sensitive human being, so he felt these horrors were coming, and then this was in 1938, so he still went back to Hungary, but he couldn't stand the atmosphere there anymore, and so 2 years later, in 1940, he left Hungary and emigrated to the United States, where he had a very unlucky and miserable life, really. And he died 1945, very ill and in utter poverty.
It's a terribly tragic story for somebody who's such an extraordinary
So it's easy to say today, but had Bartók stayed in Switzerland, I think it would have been a very different story. But of course, in 1938, even in Switzerland, you couldn't know what Hitler had in mind.
No, absolutely, absolutely. People wanted to get as far away as they could.
Yes.
My grandparents ended up in Australia. That's how far away they went.
From where?
From Austria.
From Austria.
Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah. And with the Bartók, this of course there is no piano in it, so you are exclusively as a conductor on this. What drove you to go beyond the piano into also conducting?
Curiosity and the need and the thirst to learn and to know more. I never imagined for a moment that I'm a conductor. I'm just a musician who is extending his pianistic activities, and whatever I do as a conductor, it's music that I know very well from the piano and from chamber music. So you will never see me conduct Mahler symphonies or Wagner operas. I'm not even very interested in that, and there are people who can do that much better. But in certain repertoire like this, I think I have something to give and something to say.
Certainly the orchestra has very much enjoyed working with you. Did you have an awareness of the Orchestre de Chambre de Lausanne before coming here?
Oh yes, but this is only the second time that we meet, and the first one was something like more than 35 years ago.
Right.
I came once to Lausanne and did actually 2 of the Bach concertos,
Right.
directing myself. But of course, I have heard the orchestra, and it's a lovely, lovely ensemble. I'm very, very happy to work with them. Gyula Stuller, the concertmaster, is an old friend of mine. He's much younger than me, but I have known him since he was born. So it's nice to be together.
So, a question I always like to ask our artists, which artists for you have you admired that you consider to be sort of your ideal of a musician?
There are several. Not necessarily pianist. I admire Pablo Casals more than anybody as a performer. I'm not talking now about composers, but perform. Casals, because of his wonderful freedom, the speaking way of playing, and I love the cello. The cello is my favorite instrument because it is like a baritone human voice. I also admire Casals for his political courage.
Indeed.
To me, it's no question that politics and art are not separable.
No.
Some
Absolutely.
people would say yes, but
Well,
I don't think so. And Casals is a good example. Bartók is a good example. Beethoven is a very good example.
Absolutely.
And I admire somebody like Otto Klemperer, because of all the great conductors, I find that he's almost the only one who has no vanity.
Yes. Yes.
Vanity is a very dangerous thing in the arts, in general, everywhere.
Yes, indeed.
And I think none of us is free from it. I'm certainly not free of vanity, but I'm working all my life to try to get rid of it. And Klemperer was somebody who, when he does a great masterpiece, it's not about him.
Yes.
There's no ego.
I still love his recording of Mahler's Second Symphony. There's something just absolutely
Colossal,
transcendent about it. It's extraordinary. When people come to a concert, assuming that soon people will actually personally be able to come to concerts again, what is it that you like to give them through your music?
First of all, it is not my music, but it's Bach's or Beethoven's or Schubert's or Bartók's. And obviously, my individuality or personality is not forgettable. So it will have an influence on the interpretation, but it really, I want to put myself in the background and just let the composer and the work speak, and I act like a messenger, like an ambassador between the composer and the listeners. Not more and not less, and it's not that little.
It's a responsibility.
Huge.
Yes. Thank you very much, Sir András. It's a
Thank
great
you
pleasure.
very much.
Thank you.